Today on the Illini Inquirer podcast, we're going to preview Illinois against Nebraska. We'll have Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7, the best beard in the Big Ten. We'll break down the Nebraska coach opening, who they could get to fill that spot, and a big game between Illinois and Nebraska. Illinois won 2 straight in this series, but we're going to start the pod with my guy, Joey Wagner. Joey, I think people could hear that I have a little bit of a voice issue. Having kids, man, they bring a lot of germs. And while I feel fine, the voice doesn't feel fine. So I'm going to suck down some honey, drink some tea, and try to get through this.
And I'm going to stay away from you, Jeremy, for a couple
You got an 8-hour
days.
car ride coming up here.
I'll be in the back seat. It'll be a chauffeur type situation on the way to Lincoln.
No COVID. I'm good, Joey. I feel fine. So hopefully I'm kicked this by the time we head to Lincoln together.
Be a long trip. It's a fun trip. Piper and I made a pit stop in Kansas City for basketball last year, and I don't think I've ever made the trip. I guess we drove back straight through, but I don't think I've ever made the trip straight through. It'll be fun.
Yeah. We got to hit on the 2023 schedule, and I just got a text message, like literally just got one. My wife said that notice they're playing at Kansas, and the Kansas City Royals just so happen to be at home that weekend. So maybe we'll make a trip of that, Joey. Go to Kansas City on the way to Lawrence.
Am I going to be a third wheel here?
Why not? We'll have a good time. All right, but we knew that was on the schedule. Illinois opens against Toledo September 2nd. So no week 0 because they don't have an opponent playing at Hawaii and they aren't playing overseas. September 9th at Kansas. Much more interesting game. We'll see if Lance Leipold is still there. But if he is, I love that matchup. That's a fun matchup. Not as easy as probably, was it Mike Thomas that scheduled that game? Assumed it would be. And then the Big Ten schedule opens up, Joey, against Penn State. Penn State comes here. It is the 9th straight time they start the Big Ten on the road, and they have an issue with that. Florida Atlantic, September 23rd. We're keeping division, so you got all the division opponents at Purdue, Nebraska at home, another crossover at Maryland, Wisconsin at home. Then your off week, not off until October 28th, so 8 straight games to start the season at Minnesota, home against Indiana, at Iowa, end with Northwestern. I'm wondering if Illinois Northwestern will be the second Black Friday game, but it's all about the crossovers, right? When you keep these divisions, and if you're going Penn State at home, that's tough, but you're at home. And it's of the 3 top teams in the East, that's the team you probably want to get. And then home against Indiana at Maryland. That's a pretty favorable draw, Joey.
It is. Yeah. I mean, Illinois done okay in these crossovers. I know they had to go to Penn State twice. The 2020 year was just kind of like, holy crap, we need another game in the Big Ten. Just let chaos reign and go where it's going to go. But yeah, that's favorable, Jeremy. I mean, you're right. If you don't want to see Ohio State, that's not Illinois specific, right? I don't know that anybody in the Big Ten West has a lot of interest in seeing the Buckeyes. I don't know if anybody in the Big Ten has a lot of interest in seeing the Buckeyes. But you don't want to see Michigan, and you don't want Michigan back-to-back years, right? And you got Michigan, obviously, at Michigan this year. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you and I look at Indiana and think, well, that's an upward trajectory. I mean, it's kind of hard to see that right now, and maybe we'll be wrong.
That feels like next year feels like Tom Allen's make or break year, right? Because he's got a $20 million buyout. Indiana football is not going to buy that out. He wants to be there. You got to grit another year because basketball is going to be good for them. So, yeah, I think he's got another year. Yeah,
and Maryland's not some unbeatable. Let's not say I think they're going to beat. I mean, there's so much time, right? You have no idea what these teams are going to look like. But I mean, it's not some unbeatable program that you're terrified of. So yeah, you'll take that all day. And then the 3 non-con Kansas, is much more interesting than it was in like 1989 when they scheduled this game. But come on, man. Florida Atlantic, is it Toledo? Is that what we said the other one?
Yeah, and Toledo is a good MAC program under Jason Candle, you know.
Yeah, but that's not who you are as a program anymore.
Exactly. I mean, that's a game that could be competitive for a little bit, but sure. No, that's a game under Brett Bielema, and you now expect to win and maybe win pretty easily. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's a schedule that sets up for bowl appearance, right? And that's my wife asked me, is that a good schedule? And I said, yeah. And even if they had some tough draws, like I just think Illinois is going to be a solid program, right? A good coaching staff. We'll see what happens with Ryan Walters this offseason. We'll talk all about that throughout the rest of the year. But there's a really good coaching staff that develops talent, puts them in positions to succeed. And I think offensively under Barry Lundy, they're only going to get better the more these guys get their players and develop them.
Yeah, and I think we do have to address that there are some guys, hello defensive line, Devin Witherspoon, the safeties are going to there are some spots that you're going to go into next season saying, well, I don't know. And that's fair. And we'll see what the transfer portal brings. That's a great equalizer, right? To kind of watch some of these NFL talent exoduses go, or just eligibility.
That's a good problem to have. And we talked with Brett
right.
about that, right? Like that's a good problem to have. He seems like he's more prepared for it. But I think of the guys like Devin Witherspoon, gone. Chase Brown, gone. I think Johnny Newton's getting into that category, right? Where he's gone. The big ones for me, Tommy DeVito. I know fans have asked, can he get another year of eligibility? It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case.
But it doesn't seem like they're not going to try. Yeah, I mean, I think Brett Bielema is going to pull every string that he can find until that string runs out. I don't know if it's going to work. Right. And I would caution to say maybe don't expect it to work as we sit here right now, but he's going to give it a shot.
Yeah, there was an optimism the last time we checked. The big names who are underclassmen, right? So the seniors, Palczewski, Calvin Avery, Sidney Brown, Quan Martin guys are all gone. But Julian Pearl and Isaiah Adams, right? Julian Pearl, is he going to come back for 60 years? Do you want to just try at the NFL? He's certainly got the length and athleticism to play. Isaiah Adams, I think, is a better prospect right now, more proven prospect maybe, even than Julian Pearl. But I think he could be an even better prospect if he comes back a year, maybe a day 2 draft pick. But I couldn't blame him if you were one and done at Illinois based on the year he's having. And then Keith Randolph is a huge one. Because if they get Keith Randolph back and you lose Johnny Newton and you get T-Rod Edwards back, Gabe Akers, Seth Coleman, that's still a ridiculous defensive front. So those are the three I'm most interested in, Joey.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think if you get Keith Randolph back, that's obviously one less defensive lineman I think you need out of the transfer portal. And I know they just got a commitment, Jeremy and Honor. We'll talk about that. Yeah. The next year's Johnny Newton position, to me, screams coming somewhere from the transfer portal. Yeah, I mean, that makes all the sense in the world to me. But if you get Keith, you lessen the need to go get 2 defensive linemen. Defensive linemen are at a premium. Defensive linemen, edge rushers, offensive tackles, and quarterback. There's just not enough of them to go around.
Yeah, and Keith's the kind of guy that I think could be a draft pick next year, but kind of the same thing with Isaiah Adams is I think if he came back, he's got a chance to be day 2. Like, I think Johnny could be that already. I think Devin Witherspoon already is that. Chase Brown, he's a running back. I don't think you want to spend any more of your reps at the college level, given what he's doing. Keith Randolph and Isaiah Adams and Julian Pearl are all guys I think you can sell, say, hey, you might be a 5th or 6th rounder now. You can get into the NFL, or you can be a day 2, day 3 pick, make millions next year. So that'll be interesting moving forward.
Yeah. A couple of points to add on that real quick is Keith Randolph. I mean, Jeremy, you and I have talked to him. He's a personable guy. NIL is more open for programs that win. I think you're going to find more people interested in attaching themselves to players on winning teams. Then you factor in Keith's personality, the fact that he's going to come back, if he does come back, I should say, at a pretty, what was that?
Face of the team, right?
Yeah, and minimally, he would be a guy you would look in preseason. That's probably a first team player. You can maybe 1.5 team, whatever, however you want to look at it in preseason. Isaiah Adams is really interesting to me too, because I think you could make a sell to him to exactly what you said, that, hey, this is only 1 year of like college football, Power 5 college football. What could 2 years, as you start to build momentum and your name starts to build momentum, could there be tackle opportunities for him to show that versatility where he could play probably all 4 in the NFL, maybe even all 5 in the NFL. And I know that's been a discussion. So he's a really interesting candidate. And Julian Pearl is too. To me, it gets a little hard to project when you start getting into that. Do you come back for a 6th year? 6 years in college is a long time. And maybe Julian will go that route. We don't know, but I'm with you. Those are the 3 that are probably bear the most monitoring going into this offseason.
Yeah, and Seth Coleman's a 4th-year guy. I think a 5th year could do him really well. But he's another guy that maybe we should put into that group. At least you got Gabe Akers for 2 more years.
Dude, every time we saw him twice. We saw him, what's today, Wednesday? Yeah, we saw him Tuesday walking around the Smith Center, and today, and I just keep looking. And I feel so weird at this point. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Gawking at Gabe Akers.
I mean, dude, he is truly enormous. I mean, I asked Palcho this, and I know, Jeremy, you'll get the reference. We've probably said it on here before, not to derail this. I haven't been invited on the podcast in a few weeks, so I have a few things to say. Well, do you remember when Wally Batiku came and we're
Wait,
like,
you were invited last week. We just couldn't make the times match, man. That's all.
I wasn't invited for 2 weeks, but do you remember when Wally Batiku came? We thought it was like a coach.
Yeah.
And I asked Palcho, I was like, I'm sure you remember that. I said, did you think like he was like Gabe was like a transfer, like a JUCO transfer? He's like, dude, he's huge.
Mm-hmm.
He is. What a large individual. And I think I'm really interested as we get into the back half of the season to see what his next 6 games, minimally 6 games, will look like, because he is really putting it together.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about a guy like Zy Chrysler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about massive humans. Like as he's getting comfortable, he's basically a freshman, right? It'll be interesting to see how he does. Joey, I've talked about on the pod this week 3 commitments in the class over the last week. Desmond Schuster, who they love his length. You match it up against some of the NFL, scouting combine. It's top tier length.
Is like 80-inch arm span, I think is
85-inch wingspan, 37-inch arms, which is you stack it up. Those are the longest arms that would have been at the combine, and second longest wingspan. I don't know how that matched up, but somebody must have a big chest, a wide chest. But yes, he's an interesting get. He probably won't get here until June, but similar to Zy Chrysler, I think they might think he's further along than Zy Chrysler, at least technically. But certainly a position they need to add with all the guys going to the NFL and potentially Pearl and Adams. And then you had Alex Bray, defensive lineman. They need defensive linemen. He certainly has had a great senior season and a guy who's going to work incredibly hard. And then defensive back, Sabor Kareem. I think of the commitments they have so far, Joey, I think he's got as high of a ceiling as any of them. 6'3", 180 pounds, great athlete, has played multiple sports. So what are your thoughts on the 3 commitments?
I mean, we've been talking about Sabor Kareem, maybe not in the level that we've talked about Jair Hill, because you got the in-state, the whole operation with him, right? But I think we've been talking about Sabor Kareem, like, man, you get him and it doesn't take away from, by any stretch of the imagination, take away from the need or interest or desire, very real desire to get Jair Hill on campus. But man, he's a guy that even if you lose a battle to Michigan, that you've done everything in the world right, this is a pretty good guy to have in there. And you get them both, man, that's a really good defensive secondary you're putting together here in the class of 2023. I think position versatility with him is big. I think there's a lot of options, and he could fill a lot of kind of, I don't want to say contingency plans because he wasn't brought in as a contingency plan, but it's kind of like a if then this. I mean, there's so many different options with him. That's a big one. And defensive lineman, Jeremy, we've been waiting on, right? I mean, it was a rough go of it to start in this class, and now you're seeing the Trey Pierce, Jamel Howards, they have interest from basically everybody. Outside of like that 2 or 3% of college football, the Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. I mean, they're getting it from everywhere, and they lost out on. Well, they had Jamarion Harkless and lost out on him to Auburn. So it was interesting to see.
And whoever will be coaching there next year, I don't know, but hey.
Does anyone know? I mean, that's kind of becoming quickly one of the more uncomfortable situations in Power 5 football. But yeah, man, the Bray one is interesting. They moved quickly on getting him on board, and I think there's a lot of stuff. I think maybe you brought it up, Jeremy Moragan. There's some similarities there. But to me, that's a down. I mean, you want to be a development program, right? So that's like develop for down the line. And I said it earlier, and I still believe that the defensive line is going to be made up of T-Rod Edwards, maybe Keith Randolph, and bring in a transfer portal candidate in 2023, and maybe 2, depending on what Keith Randolph does. So depth, right? Like you believe in your ability to develop, you believe in your ability to scout, to make sure that you see guys who fit what you want to do. And Alex Bray looks like he's got the frame to tack on some weight over the course of time. That's appealing, but it's just a matter of it's hard because especially because the line is losing people. Like I think the mindset is you see a commit, it's like, all right, see you against Toledo to open it next year. It's like, well, okay, hold on. And that's not a knock on the kid, but that's not what this program has ever wanted to be for the most part. And no program wants to start true freshmen in the trenches.
Well, and this, Joey, defensive line is one of the hardest positions along quarterback to recruit because there's only so many of them. There's only so many, FBS Power 5, more importantly, Power 5 quarterback prospects. So a lot of them you have to develop, right? Like there might only be 30 given Power 5 quarterbacks in the class. So you got to go find somebody with tools that you think you can coach up and develop. And Illinois and Barry Lunny thought they might find that in Cal Swanson, but even they'll tell you, ask us in 3 years. Ask us in 3 years how Cal Swanson is. It's the same thing with Alex Bray and I think Mason Moragan. I like both these guys on film. They have good size, good athleticism, and they're tenacious. And one thing that this staff seems to like a lot, whether it's Cal Swanson or Alex Bray or Mason Moragan, these guys that have to develop, is their work ethic, the way they understand football. That's part of their evaluation when it comes to who can we develop, right? If we're going to be a development program, who do we think is definitely going to reach his ceiling? And I think they feel that way about Bray, Moragan, and potentially Swanson.
Yeah, and I think they feel that way, that they can make that ceiling higher as coaches, right? It's a mix. Like, they believe very much in themselves to develop those ceilings to go even higher, and they need someone to get there. And I think you're seeing just kind of a mix of both. And I don't like you and I are sitting here saying like, look out for some all Big Ten candidates in 2026. But I'm just saying, like, that's seemingly the approach, especially at some of those positions of just not enough humans to fill them all in Power 5.
And to be honest, this staff gets the benefit of the doubt. They really do. When they're doing what they're doing with the talent they've inherited, some guys they've added early on, Josh McCray, we know is a really good football player, Matthew Bailey, Gabe Akis. They get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And then you turn on the film and you go, oh, I can see that. I can see him being in 2 or 3 years, potential starter for Illinois. So it's kind of delayed gratification. Like, you're not going to get a lot of Gabe Akises, right?
Sure.
Of course, Malik Elzy or Jair Hill. Yeah, those guys could be, right? And that's why it's so much fun right now to follow those recruitments and to be involved, because those are the next level kind of recruitments that this staff is after. And they actually have a chance to win now, Joey, because they're actually winning on the field.
I agree. As you said, I was going to ask you, I think the answer is Matt Bailey, but when you look at like the poster, no one else thought, but we did type guy, I think it's him, right? Because Gabe could have gone to Tennessee if Illinois didn't. Yeah. Go in on that, but like, I think you're going to see.
I think James Krutz is going to be that guy. I like James Krutz a lot. Hank Beatty had an Iowa State offer, but he really didn't when he picked Illinois. They wouldn't have taken Henry Boyer, Jordan Anderson. So some of these guys still got to play out. Ashton Hollins, right? But
I'm just looking at the guys who have had that impact so far. Like, I can see in 3 years where Brett Bielema is in a signing day press conference. He says, Matthew Bailey, no one in the world thought, and then he's gonna. I don't know what Matthew Bailey's gonna do in 3 years, but he's sure gonna get brought up by Brett Bielema. And I think like he's a guy.
There's another one, yeah.
It's interesting, and I get it. Like, maybe, come on, dude. There wasn't a lot of fanfare around Matthew Bailey on the signing day. It wasn't.
No,
I don't think. I remember the press conference, but it's like he could play here, he could play here, he could play here. I don't know. They really even had a positional plan, or at least they weren't sharing that. Yeah. I think they had ideas, right? I mean, I don't like, he wasn't a guy they tried all over, but I just think it's interesting. And you're right. The benefit of the doubt exists for right now. And it is crazy that we're able to say that halfway through Brett Bielema's second year. Like, those impacts have been pretty quick.
Speaking of some of that development, last week they were able to get some of that, a couple development practices. And we had a story last week about, bowl practices. Brett Bielema said about 5 or 6 will be development practices. They didn't have that last year, right? So I think that's going to be really important for this class of 2022, these underclassmen right now who aren't getting a lot of reps, and specifically the quarterbacks. It doesn't mean I think Donovan Leary or Kirkland Michaud is going to be the guy next year, but those are important practices for those guys, the offensive linemen that aren't getting a lot of reps. But another part of the off week that I'm really interested in to see how it pays off, Joey, is Barry Lunny said he made it a point of emphasis of red zone, more red zone time on the field, more of an emphasis in their meetings. And Barry's got to learn from some of these red zone mistakes. Like, Jay Lamy went over the film. I didn't think a lot of the stuff was Barry's problem. I thought it was some bad execution at times in the red zone. But the numbers say they've had 1 touchdown on 9 red zone opportunities the last couple of weeks. I don't know if it's going to be an issue against Nebraska, because, they might let you score outside of the red zone with their defense. But against Michigan, against Purdue, maybe against Michigan State, it's going to be very important to cash in on red zone opportunities. You can't keep settling for 3 and expecting your defense to bail you out time and time and time again. The offense has kept them from a couple blowouts, right? You still won those games, but the offense has kept you from really blowing out Virginia, really blowing out Minnesota.
Yeah, real quick, I do want to say, I think the thing Brett Bielema, he wanted to be in a bowl game last year. I think if you listen to him, I think he brought up the practices a lot. Like, I think that is one of the things he was the most frustrated about not getting was those 15 practices. But to your point, yeah, if you in those games, those Virginia games, whatever games, if they punch in one or two of those, dude, it's not close. They win Indiana probably with, and I understand. I get the Brian Hightower. Okay, I understand that. But like if you punch in that goal line where you end up with nothing, that's a different game and it's a different season. Nah, maybe not a different season. It's a different look, right? You're probably in the top 15 at this point, and you're pretty far along in what you want to do divisional wise. So I'm interested in what that looks like. I think Josh McCray, I think Brett Bielema's playing it, not trying to backtrack or slow play it. I expect Josh McCray to play, and Brett Bielema expects him to play. He's just not going to come out, and at least as of Monday, we'll see what he says on Thursday when we talk to him. Yeah. He's not going to come out and say guarantee. He's not making any guarantees there. But I think his return will help that. He's a huge individual, and I think you get down there, and I think that combined with the more experience on the offensive line, they're probably just better. The offensive line right now is probably better equipped than it was against Indiana to handle red zone, like close goal line.
Well, in the red zone, everything gets shorter. Windows get shorter in the passing game, right? But also for Chase Brown on the outside, like those safeties can creep up and go get him. And let's be honest, like Chase Brown's awesome. He's not the most powerful guy. Like he can break one-on-one tackles, but when he's going through a pile, it's hard for him to push the pile. He's 205 pounds compared to 240 for Josh McCray. So I do think it'll make an impact, but he's definitely just a versatile player, and maybe he keeps Chase fresher later in games, later in drives. You can put in Josh McCray, feel pretty good about it. And Josh himself is a pretty good receiver. So on rollouts or something like that, Josh McCray could be a weapon there.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I don't think Josh McCray's like Chase Brown's going to get Chase Brown's numbers, right? Like I don't think the return of Josh McCray is going to change.
I think Brett Bielema cares about the Heisman vote. Hot take.
Doak Walker.
I know to have Chase Brown even get 6th place in the Heisman vote. Like how big of a feather in the cap is that for him? So like, I still think Chase is going to get 25 plus touches from here on out every game because I think it matters for the program. Now you want to keep him healthy. You don't want to be stupid about it. But I think this 100-yard streak, keeping him in the Heisman conversation is really important for him.
It's good to make buzz, right? Like you're getting people calling the Smith Center reporters, national reporters who haven't been calling for a long time. The other interesting point I want to make, Jeremy, about the red zone is remember the first bye week, the topic of conversation was got to cut off these turnovers, It's just too many. And it was like, that wasn't BS. It was far too many, but they did. They came out and they did. I know they had I'm trying to remember. When was that? Was that after Virginia it was after the Virginia game? Is that right? It all blurs together.
Yeah. Turnovers in that one and Indiana.
Yeah. And they cut back on those. So I asked Tip Ryman, I said, it seems like that was the plan going out. Like, do you think you can have a similar success rate, I guess, just given you focused on it? And he said, paraphrasing here, he's like, it's what healthy cultures do is coaches emphasize something to us. We listen to it and we take to heart. So will it work? I don't know, but like, I'm really interested, especially over the course of the next 3 games, like before Michigan, because you can do a lot of damage on the Big Ten West in the next 3 games. Will that be, will there be like a huge noticeable statistical change there?
All right. Illinois opened as a 5.5 point favorite at Nebraska. Again, they've won back-to-back games against Nebraska. Nebraska's played a little bit better here recently. Opponent matters. Indiana, they beat, which was probably an impressive win for them. Rutgers was not an impressive win, coming back from 13-0 down, but it wasn't a pretty win. But then against Purdue, it got into a shootout. It wasn't as close, I think, as the score, 43-37, but Trey Palmer was ridiculous. But coming into this game, Joey, I think it's natural for fans to be a little nervous, thinking there could be a trap game, some complacency. Brett Bielema has mentioned that word, that you can't get too far ahead. You don't want to look forward to the Big Ten championship. I get it. I think we're all human, even these kids, but I think this coaching staff's done a good job of emphasizing week to week. Even after a Minnesota game, when I started talking to these players about the Big Ten championship, like Tariq Barnes and Alex Pacheco said, yeah, this is awesome to win these games, but if we get knocked on our ass the next game, then what does it all mean? Like we got to do it week after week. It's consistency. And with the leadership of this team, and these guys have been there before, right? They were 6-4 in 2019 with a chance to go 8-4, go to a great bowl game, and they slipped up. I think all that matters. I'm not as concerned about this team showing up and think they're just going to win against Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think Isaiah, to add to that, I think Isaiah Williams said something interesting. And he was asked, well, I mean, similar lines. He said, we haven't really done anything yet. I mean, I think that point being, and no one, I don't say they didn't care, because I'm sure they were thrilled. And we saw the bowling ball video in the locker room. Yeah. I will find the origin of that, unless somebody else hawks that idea from me. Where did the bowling ball come from, Jeremy? Well, get Josh Whitman on the bat signal here, and we'll figure this out.
Because Josh brought it in the last game. I think the ops people brought it to Michigan State, and then Whitman brought it in, I believe.
Okay, we got to get some answers there. That's top priority list. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case where they go in and just don't and sleep on Nebraska, because if you do that, Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer are going to hurt you really, really bad, because they can do that. But I just think it's different, man. I think this coaching staff has them, like, they buy in, and I've said that for a while, and I've written about it. Dude, they will follow Brett Bielema wherever Brett Bielema leads them, right? Like they believe in what he says and how he says it and the way that he's connected. And I don't think that's BS or coach speak or anything like that. I think they truly are, like, their chips are all there. Like, they're all in on Brett Bielema and the messaging, and his messaging has been consistent. And I think that's probably part of the reason they're all in, is because it is consistent messaging. But yeah, I don't think, like, I get it. And I don't think it's an easy game either.
Oh.
Like, I think Nebraska coming off a bye, and Lincoln, Nebraska also coming off a bye. Like, I think there's potential to slip up there, and teams slip up. College football teams slip up all the time. It's what makes this thing so fun. But am I projecting Illinois to lose? No. No, but I also don't think it's over in the third quarter either. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think, and Nebraska might lead in the third quarter, and people, and chaos ensues, and you get all the get to ABC now tweets and all of that. But yeah, I think he's going to have those guys ready to rock.
Yeah, because listen, to do all these big things they want to do, Saturday's a big part of that, right? You need 3 more wins at least to clinch the Big Ten West. If you win the next 3, you do clinch the Big Ten West. And Nebraska is a divisional opponent that's a game behind you. So outside of Purdue, this game means as much as any, right, on the schedule, because it gives you an extra game on Nebraska. You have a 2-game lead plus the tiebreaker. So basically, Nebraska's out of it. You knock Nebraska out if you win. And then, of course, you take a game lead on Purdue, who is off with 4 games left, including 1 game against Purdue. So this is the second most important game on their schedule left. It's that one and Nebraska. If you're talking about Big Ten West race, then, of course, Michigan could be a very, very important game if they take care of business the next couple of weeks. I think the matchup of the passing offense of Nebraska and the passing defense of Illinois is fascinating, because Nebraska just likes to Rex Grossman this stuff now. Screw it, we're going deep, right? It was great against Purdue, and it was good against Indiana. Trey Palmer is the best wide receiver Illinois is probably going to play all year. Jaden Reed is in that mix. Charlie Jones is in that mix. But Trey Palmer, I expect to be a high draft pick after the season. LSU transfer, former top 100 prospect, really fast, blazing fast. And going up against Devin Witherspoon and Quan Martin and maybe some Taz Nicholson is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think it's a lot on the line here for Devin Witherspoon and his money-making capabilities. Quan Martin, same. But I find it fascinating because Illinois has run so much man, Joey. And going man against one of the fastest guys in the Big Ten is going to be really interesting. But also, your pass rush should obliterate Nebraska's offensive line, because Nebraska's offensive line is terrible. I think Casey Thompson, I got the vibe asking Ryan Walters, if you go back and look at Joey's transcript of it, I got the vibe he thinks they can pick him off several times, because Casey Thompson does put the ball in danger a lot. But Trey Palmer by himself and Casey Thompson being willing to wing it down there and let Trey Palmer go win, I think makes that at least an interesting aspect of this game.
That was fascinating, and on so many levels. But I mean, how much damage is he going to do? I think Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton and Gabe Backus and Seth Coleman. I think Casey, I mean, he's gonna make some plays, because that's what you do. That's not gonna be a very fun day, I don't think, for him. That offensive line is a disaster and seemingly getting kind of
Way
worse.
it's worse, way worse than Minnesota's. Iowa's offensive line is not very good, and Wisconsin's isn't quite Wisconsin, but Nebraska's it's very similar to Virginia. Their team.
I was waiting to see if you were going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, the way they want to wing the ball down the field, but are they going to have time to? Is Casey Thompson going to feel like Brennan Armstrong by the end of this game, where Brennan was just like, I don't care. I'm sick of getting hit.
It's fascinating, Jeremy, and and obviously the Trey Palmer Devin Witherspoon matchup. That's my favorite matchup of the game. I think
we got to throw Quan Martin in there because Trey likes to line up in the slot a lot too.
I wish we would have thought. I would have thought to ask Walters, like, will that just be a straight up blanket?
I thought of that. He's not going to share that, right? Like he
is not. It's our job to tell people that in like the third quarter, like Devin Witherspoon's been on him from the get go. It'd be cool. I don't know, Devin Witherspoon won't do it or Quan Martin won't do it. If they did like the Breaking Bad where he just lays on the pile of money if they have a good game, just tweet that out. Because dude,
put his face out there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, is that not the underlying story
Hugh?
to the matchup?
Is that Hugh? Is that what his name is?
Oh, it's a good. I just rewatched that recently.
I'll figure it
living the dream. But is that not obviously the big matchup is that and the in-game effect and can you win this game and can those two have success?
Huel is the
Huel.
Yeah.
But that's the other part. Dude, there's some money to be made on Saturday in Lincoln if really right. I mean, Trey Palmer's made money already, but you're seeing Devin Witherspoon getting talked about more and more. And as those
CBS is crazy.
Holy smokes, man.
I see some people don't have him in his top 50. CBS continues to have him in the first round. They had him in the top 10 here recently. I don't know if he's got the stature for that.
That's right. Yeah.
He's a little thin, but man, in this league, I think he can play nickel. I think he can play corner. And I think Quan Martin, by the end of this process, people are going to start talking about him more.
Ryan Walters has been trying to get everybody to talk about him for months.
Kind of hell,
he's really good. And that's all I know. That's another discussion for another day, but goodness, you're going to miss that kid. You're going to miss him and you're going to miss Sidney Brown. And they might not get all the attention they deserve. And Quan's getting a lot more. He was on some of those midseason awards, but man, that's such a fun matchup. But I'm so interested in anytime we've asked Brett Bielema, hey, how's the secondary? Well, listen, that defensive line too, and the defensive front, and that's a clear advantage, Illinois, that defensive front to their offensive line.
Casey Townsend's going to get hit 15 times.
I'm going to put the over under in that for quarterback hits.
Yeah.
What do you set it at realistically? 12.5?
Are we going to do the PFF number? Because the quarterback, the QBH stat that they give us officially, I never feel is accurate. But
you feel it's low?
15?
No. Do you feel like the QBH stat is usually lower than reality?
Yeah, that feels like hurries to me more than hits. It always feels like, but it is a quarterback hit stat. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be a pretty high number.
I would set it at 13.5.
Yeah, that's a good number.
And I still feel weird about saying over. I'm still fighting that, Jeremy. I'm still fighting the feeling weird about saying some of this stuff because I just haven't said it since I've covered this program.
The other part about this is Nebraska's defense. They're bad. Okay. They are not good. 31 points they're giving up per game. And it's just a complete contrast of styles here. Illinois is so physical. Illinois is they're so much better in the trenches. And we've seen that the last 2 years. Scott Frost got skill players. He never had issues with skill players. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't compete in the Big Ten West where you have to be good in the trenches. It's amazing Purdue has been as good as they have. That's credit to Jeff Brom because they aren't good, especially offensive line wise. Defensive line, they're solid. But Nebraska is terrible in the trenches and they're not good in the secondary either. Barry Loney Jr. has made a good impact on this program, right? I mean, putting up 34 against a good Wisconsin defense. I still think they're good. Putting up 26 against Minnesota, but they should have put up 40 against Minnesota. They should put up 40 against Virginia. This is a game. I don't know if I'm predicting it because they're red zone issues, but this is a game where you could see the full Barry Loney Jr. breakout here because I expect Chase Brown and Josh McCray to have big games. I just don't see Illinois' offensive line struggling against this Nebraska defensive front. Not that there's not talent because O'Shawn Mathis is a very talented transfer Stephon Wynn is from Alabama. Garrett Nelson's a good edge player. But the Illinois offensive line continues to play better and better. And then Tommy DeVito, just as long as he doesn't make mistakes, man, I think they're going to find openings against a bad Nebraska secondary. So if there's a time for Barry Lundy Jr.'s offense to have a full breakout, it's Saturday in Lincoln.
Yeah, I also can go the other way, though. It's like, don't overthink it. Just give the ball to Chase Brown.
Yeah, I hate to go Matt Nagy, but be you. Be you. Run the ball. Run the ball. Like, and quick passes, all those things. I don't think you have to do much different, but like, just because your opponent changes the defense, like, I feel like this could be the best game we see from a Barry Lundy Jr. offense. And plus, I think he's had time to kind of evaluate himself, right? And Brett Bielema's kind of made mention of that too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you could see that, but I could also see just letting your backs go until they're proven they can't, and whenever, or if that happens. But yeah, I mean, you just don't think that this Nebraska defense is any good. And I don't know that there's not a lot of answers for Chase Brown that Illinois has encountered to this point. And I don't know that Nebraska would fall into the category of an answer to Chase Brown, right? I mean, it sounds so simple, but you got a guy like him, let him go, man. Let him go. And then when he needs a break, give it to big Josh McCray, who he is like, outside of the individual matchup that we talked about with Witherspoon and Trey Palmer, I'm really interested to see what Josh McCray, what's his snap count, what's his workload, what do they want to do, how's he look? Like, I'm interested. I'm really interested in all that, because you have an offense that we think's been fine. I don't think that means that
huge improvement.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean there's no deficiencies, because the red zone's been a deficiency, and you've seen some, there's some things you'd like to see cleaned up. But you have that, and then you can add Josh McCray into that. It's like, well, okay, now what can this look like, and just how's that balance all work? That's what I'm so interested in.
All right, Joe, let's wrap this up. Picks to click. Do you want to start on offense? Are we going to pick a tight end this game? Hasn't been much action towards the tight ends.
I am not going to do that. Man, I want to have fun and say just Josh McCray. Because,
go for it.
Because what? Okay, but what is click?
See, right? I'm because do a Seinfeld thing and do the Seinfeld voice that you won't understand. Take it. Sorry.
But what's the definition of clicking, right? Because I just think it's so varied, and I think it's on a
curve. Touchdown. Yeah.
All right, give me Josh McCray.
Go for it.
Who's yours?
I'm going Pat Bryant. Pat Bryant.
Okay. All right.
I think they can stretch the field against this team. Again, I don't want them to do that because Nebraska's bad. Like, do what you do, run the football, but I think it's going to set up some big plays. And Pat Bryant is the big play guy. I thought he was fantastic against Minnesota. The whole wide receiver core, was really good.
Much better than we thought. Like, we've got to own up to that and say this is a much better receiver group than we thought coming into the season.
But you know what? Like, we both thought Pat Bryant could break out.
Yeah.
And I kept, why isn't Brian Hightower like a guy?
Yeah.
So he ends up finding his role, and I think he's playing a nice role for him. So I think we had questions about him, but why wouldn't you after what happened last year? All right, defense.
Can we also, real quick, if anyone's confused, this is in the perpetual still non-Chase Brown category. Like, if you're not familiar with the kind of the bit, like, we can't pick Chase Brown.
Yeah, and Tommy DeVito has to have like a 300-yard passing game. So we try to do somebody like the third option. All right, pick to click defensively. This one you can go with anybody because it is the fire department. What did Brett Bielema look at? The Bad News Bears? I like the fire department. Where are the orange hats at Memorial Stadium? If you're gonna have a sellout crowd against Michigan State, orange fireman hats. The fire department for the defense. Easy.
I'm still standing by. You recreate the scene from The Office that Ryan leaves the pita in the thing, and the fire truck pulls up. And imagine all of the defense on this fire truck. Ryan Walters dressed like Dwight.
Are you just like superimposing like their heads, like their profile?
No. You remake this whole deal. Yeah. Now the issue would be trying to get yourself a fire truck. Yeah. But I'm all for it. I think figure out a way to do that. That being said, do you want to go first? Do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going to go Seth Coleman.
Dang, that's good.
I'm going to go. Listen, they have to double team Johnny Newton because they got a redshirt freshman playing guard. They're going to have to double team. Calvin Avery could have a monster day too, by the way. But I'm going to go with Seth Coleman because he's going to get one-on-one battles. And listen, everyone loves Gabe Backus, but I just try to continue to give Seth Coleman love because he's playing at all Big Ten first team level too. So I can see multiple sacks for Seth Coleman coming out of this game.
Yeah, and I asked Ryan Walters, like, when you have two outside backers like that playing, like, what do you do anything? He said, yeah, we try to scheme them to get one-on-one. And
Easy
get
to do
those.
with Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton too.
Yeah, yeah. So if I were to pick, and this is not my official pick, but if I were to pick Devin Witherspoon,
Yeah.
what does that look like? Right? Because like obviously you're not shutting Trey Palmer down.
You could.
You could, but I mean, I think you start with like a base of like three catches for 50 yards.
Yeah, if Devin, if we come back, see the PFF stat of he's got an under 50% completion rate against his targets, I think he's in the running for that. Again, if Trey Palmer, if Quan, I'll give you Quan and Spoon. I'll give you Quan and Spoon, and if Trey Palmer has under 60 yards receiving, they win.
Okay. I will say, like, I want to give some context. That's not trying to like be a homer and say, well, Devin Witherspoon's. It just feels like that. Like this is the best opportunity of the season for him to say, "Hey, this is who I am," and like I'm really this good. And I think he's a guy whose personality is not shy, and that's probably an understatement. Like I just think this is the chance that he can come out, and I'm sure Aaron Henry's been in his ear about like you can really be. You can make a lot of noise in this game for yourself. And I think he's a guy who could rise to that. And then you combine the fact that I think your guys up front are going to get to him. Yeah. Well, it could be something.
This would be like a matchup of what, like Darrelle Revis against
Devin Witherspoon's favorite cornerback, by the way.
Yeah. Darrelle Revis against, say, Antonio Brown in their primes. You know what I mean?
Randy Moss, is that fair? It's not the same comparison. It's
yeah,
not the same.
Trey's a different wideout.
Yeah, it's a different comparison. I was thinking more AFC East.
Yeah.
Fun battles there. That's fine. Yeah. That's
something like that. Like that's in the Big Ten. That's kind of what this matchup is. So it's a lot of fun. But I just think Quan's going to check him a lot too. So I'll give you both those guys as a pick to click. All right. Anything else? Any leftover nuggets before we get to Lincoln?
No, I think we covered a lot, right? I mean, recruiting, that was a big week, Jeremy, for recruiting. It was a really big week. I don't think so, man. It's nice to.
I saw the mug. It's a nice spot in the standings, right? I enjoy our teams being same spot in the standings.
I don't think we have to talk. I thought this is like an Illinois podcast. Are we?
Do the Bears have a better quarterback than the Packers? Go.
Shoot. I have to think about it. That pisses me off. I have to think about it. It pisses me off that I actually have to think about it. No, probably not now. But I don't like the trend. Dude, Aaron Rodgers has stunk. He's been a bad quarterback this year. And
yeah, both of them do not have help around them. But hey, one of them can overcome. The other guy can't.
The other guy chooses not to.
He's got a lot of money though, and a heck of a career. But
oh, buddy, I would be.
I'm just gonna enjoy this while we can. The Bears, Packers in the same record, and you look at the Bears close losses. Maybe they are better than Packers. I
think we're done here. Sign it off. Get your daughter to close us out.
See you Friday. Bye, Joe.
Yeah.